The South Carolina Aquarium has had to make a lot of changes during COVID. Today, I talk exclusively with the president and CEO of the aquarium, Kevin Mills, for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. Kevin Mills, welcome to the award-winning Quintin's Close-Ups.
Good to be here, Quintin. So nice to meet you.
Likewise, I know we're Facebook friends, but we're officially meeting virtually here. But obviously, you're the president and CEO of the South Carolina Aquarium.
Right.
How do you describe Kevin Mills these days?
Well, I'd say a year older, but maybe 10 years older after 2020. Hopefully a little wiser and, hopefully in a place to really learn the lessons of this past year in a way that can help not only me personally, but our organization and ultimately our community be better, do better, and help save wildlife and wild places.
What lessons has the South Carolina Aquarium learned from 2020?
I think, first of all, just the test of resilience, understanding what it is that we do and why we exist, and then helping the community come to appreciate that so that we can deliver what they need from us and that we can also enjoy the support that helps sustain the organization.
What does the community need right now, Kevin?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Yeah, what does the community need right now?
Well, I think the community needs a lot of things, obviously. I think they need a place of refuge, and we've always been that for families, for school children, but with limited capacity, a lot of people just simply haven't been able to come through our doors. And so we're looking for that moment when we can open up the doors fully and everyone can come back and enjoy the place of community. And also the opportunity to observe wildlife up close and develop a new appreciation for it.
But then what is the state of wildlife as you know it?
You know, these have been a troubled, really couple of centuries for wildlife, in large part because of human behaviors. So whether it's encroachment on territory or pollution or environmental factors that are contributed to by human activity like climate change, it's tough times, and we're going through an unprecedented wave of extinctions. And so our role as an institution is to help people understand where we contribute and how we can help prevent extinctions from happening. And you can't do that until you get people to experience these animals up close and develop a sense of love and reverence for them. So that once they open their hearts, they begin to open their minds to what's actually happening.
What wave of extinction are you worried about right now?
I think probably for me personally, but I think organizationally as well, we're greatly concerned about the impacts of climate change. And so we've done a lot over the last 5 years to help, first of all, develop the tools for communities to come to terms with what's happening all around us. And then to learn from that so that we can apply the right lessons to mitigate and adapt to those effects. And not just to protect wildlife and wild places, but also people and property. We understand that if we don't take care of ourselves, we're not likely to take care of wildlife. And fortunately, there are solutions and approaches that we can take that can help benefit and lift up all.
What solution are you looking at right now?
Well, one of the things we have to contend with, obviously, here in the Low Country are the effects of sea level rise attributed to climate change. And so I think it's something that many people understand and appreciate because they live through it. They live through it daily. We've had more king tide events in the last couple of years than many of our long-term residents have had in their lifetime. And it's simply because the sea level is rising. And that creates all kinds of issues. It creates issues of commerce and connectivity. As the waters continue to rise, how easy will it be to get around Charleston, to go the places that we need to go? How will supply chains be disrupted? But it also has very acute risks associated with catastrophic storms, for example. And so a Hurricane Hugo that would happen off our shores today would be much more devastating than the one that happened in 1989, simply because there's a greater volume of water coming ultimately with greater velocity to our shores. So how can we prepare for that? Because the water will continue to rise. There's no turning that back. How do we live in that new environment in a way that safeguards us and safeguards everything that we love?
And I want to turn. I'll get back to that in just a second. But obviously, you talk about the limited capacity down there at the aquarium right down the street here. What is the biggest difference about membership?
So we've been very fortunate to have members continue to support us and even visit us as greatly as they did before this pandemic started. So we are operating at a reduced capacity. We only let through 15% of our fire code capacity at this time. That ensures social distancing. It creates an environment that people are looking for, which is a safe one, a place where they can come and enjoy a common bond with their family and with the creatures that we care for, but not have to be worried about the risks associated with COVID. So members have responded to that. They've continued to sign up and renew their memberships and even helped sustain us in extraordinary ways. We lost about $5 million from what typically is a $12 million budget in 2020. And that's because most of our revenues are derived from people coming to visit us, right? But offsetting that has been this wonderful outpouring of community support, and people have really stepped up to help us take care of the animals here and to help support and sustain our education, our conservation programs as well. So 6 months ago, if you'd asked me what's the future look like, I would have said it's cloudy and uncertain. Today, I can speak with confidence that we're getting through this. We're going to pull through to the other side and return to what we've done historically and even more as we build on our strategic plan. And that's only because of this wonderful outpouring of community support.
As a matter of fact, Kevin, let me ask you this. What comprehensive plan are you developing for the aquarium that will require you all to assess the current situation along with your other goals?
Sure. Well, we're always planning and we're always reviewing the plans, but our strategic plan, which we call our landmark plan, because last year, ironically, we observed our 20th anniversary. We were looking to celebrate it, not quite in the way that we ended up celebrating. But that defined a roadmap for the next 5 years. And what we've learned over the years is what we do best is to really be an agent for our community, to understand the natural world around them. And we do that through conservation and education programs primarily. So I know most people think of the aquarium as a fun place to come, and it is and always will be that. But we do so much behind the scenes and so much out in the community to protect wildlife, to lift up communities and give them the resources to comprehend the natural world and its effects. And that's what our future is all about, is building on those proficiencies and being what our community needs us to be.
How do you comprehend the natural world right now, Kevin?
Well, science is the foundation of the way that we think about the world around us. And we're a very data-driven organization. And so we're constantly engaging our partners in research to better understand the world. Right now, we're doing a lot of work in the natural environment with partners from DNR, from University of South Carolina, Georgia Tech, to understand what's even happening to salt marsh, which is such an important fabric of our natural environment. It sustains so many species that live off of our shores. About 70% of pelagic species that swim in our waters start really in the salt marsh. They're a wonderful nursery for animals that eventually mature and brave the ocean waters. The salt marshes are also a tremendously protective ribbon and barrier that prevents storm surge from having the most devastating effects it may otherwise have. But we're losing it. We're losing it because of human encroachment, because of the built environment, because of climate change, and for things that we may not even fully understand yet. And so we're engaged in research right now that helps us understand why it is that we've lost 70% of our salt marsh nationally since 1900. You can see it in your own lifetime. People that have lived here see, like in Maryville community where we're spending a lot of time, they can see black patches of pluff mud where previously salt marsh existed. So what's happening there? How can we prevent that die-off? Because we need our salt marsh.
Yes, indeed. What other data are you looking at right now?
Well, again, just in terms of climate change, we're trying to understand what this additional water means to us now and what it will mean over time. So we're partnering with the Virginia Institute of Marine Sciences to understand the impact of that water at a macro and micro level. So what do things like climate change and catastrophic storms mean with additional volumes of water at a macro level when drilled down to a micro level? So when you look at even the grid of Peninsula Charleston, where does the water go when it's washed ashore? What happens? We can create what if scenarios. What happens if we build a wall around Charleston? Or if we increase the density of salt marsh as a protective ribbon around different parts of our environment? This tool that we're developing will be a tremendous planning tool that will allow us to make tough decisions with finite resources in the coming years to create a safer Charleston. And there's no silver bullet, but the more we understand what it is we're up against, the better we can be in making the smart decisions with our precious resources.
And I know this might be a difficult question, but what is that current density?
The density of
with salt, salt water and all that whatnot.
Yeah, so we have a wonderful individual on our team, our Director of Conservation, Albert George, who is a scientist. I'm not a scientist, I'm an interpreter of science. So I don't want to venture beyond my own expertise to answer questions I'm probably not fully capable of.
Sure.
We know that there's a foot more water in Charleston now than there was even at the turn of the last century. And it's anticipated that there could be as much as 6 feet more water by 2100. And so that in and of itself creates tremendous pressures on our environment and forces us to ask some very difficult questions about the future of Charleston and how we respond.
And speaking of pressure, let me ask you this as we talk about money. What does your financial restructuring look like right now?
So we had to make some really difficult decisions in the last year, as every organization did, and certainly nonprofits did. When you take away almost half of our revenues, that means we have to downsize some of our programs as well as our staff. So one of the toughest things that we did along the way is we actually lost about 25% of our workforce over this time. And we hope to build back up over time, but it's not going to happen overnight. We have to make sure that we're able to take care of our animals, we're able to manage our building, and then to continue our mission-related programs. When we closed our doors last March, some organizations were able to simply lock the doors and turn the lights off and tell people to stay at home. We couldn't do that, right? We have thousands of animals in our care, more than 500 species that needed our ongoing attention, and that comes at great, extraordinary expense. So as a result, we're budgeting this year at about 67% of what we typically would earn. We hope we can improve that, but a lot of that has to do with the vaccine, the rollout, the speed of it, and the safety that will eventually return to our broader society. And we're prepared to go whatever direction is required of us to continue to provide a safe experience and to ensure that our mission gets delivered.
And you talk about the building. How do you upgrade your facility and infrastructure while increasing operational revenues?
Yeah, so it's a great question, Quintin, and that's where we have to be very careful that the cash that we have is applied to the most critical needs. So, one of the things we're doing is fortifying our building against sea level rise and storm surge. In fact, we had damage from one of the hurricanes just a couple of years ago that peeled off a portion of our northern face of our wall. And that project had to continue, obviously, in repairing it. And in fact, it's wrapping up this week. So it's just a matter of being good stewards with our money, applying it to where it's most needed, and then maybe turning down the dial a little bit in programs that don't have the same critical urgency.
And let me ask you this, Kevin, how will you build cash reserves for the aquarium?
That's a great question, Quintin. And it's one of our goals this year to make sure that we rebuild our reserve, because we don't know what's around the corner next year. There could be another pandemic. There could be a different kind of emergency, another hurricane that has more devastating effect. So before we begin to grow back our programs and rehire wonderful staff that we miss dearly, we need to make sure that we have money in the bank to get through that. And our current financial plan provides for that and accounts for that reserve that's so necessary.
And could savings realized from the debt restructuring help finance new exhibits and other investments?
Well, yes. So, over time, as we build our reserve back up, we are fortunate to enjoy sustaining support through membership and through other major donors that allows us to think big and about resuming our plans. So we fully intend to be back in full operational swing next year. And in fact, planning continues for many of the things that we've imagined over the next 5 years. One of the things that we're excited about is to be able to convert the Maritime Center, which is the beautiful building just down the street from us. As you know, the International African American Museum is being built just, less than a block away. And on the other side of that is the Maritime Center, which is largely a warehouse space, right? Particularly the first floor. We're going to be converting that, thanks to our partnership with the city, into classrooms. And those classrooms will allow us to serve more students and introduce more to the wonders of the world beyond the ocean just off of our coast, and to the importance of value of understanding science as a way to protect what we love. And so we have some wonderful donors that have already stepped up to that project. That will continue apace in a couple of years. That dream will be realized. And we'll be in the wonderful position of serving more students instead of right now turning away 2 students for every student that comes to visit the aquarium in our classrooms that are downstairs in this building.
Let me ask you this too. What is the complexity of programs for the aquarium?
Right. If you look at just education alone, we, as I mentioned, we have classrooms downstairs. Of course, those are quiet right now because we can't bring students into our buildings. Many are learning virtually.
Right.
We also do a lot of outreach. So we send our van and our educators with animals all over the state. We've been to every county, and that's also not happening right now. The silver lining is that we developed a proficiency a few years ago to do distance learning through digital means, whether it's through Skype or Facebook or any number of digital interfaces. And we were able to pivot fully into digital learning with the advent of COVID-19. And many of our programs now exist online in that respect. And in fact, not just through students throughout South Carolina, but we continue to serve students around the world. We've been in more than 40 countries. We've been reaching kids in every continent, with the exception of Antarctica. I don't think there are any children there. That will continue as well. So our education offerings are very complex. We go where we're needed and where our messages can have impact and inspire kids to think differently about the natural world.
And speaking of reach, I know this might be tough right now, but it's obviously needed even in the pandemic. But what is the ideal upside marketing potential for your aquarium?
When we think about marketing, obviously we want people to come here and enjoy that sense of community and that experience that is not available even in the wild, of seeing some of these animals up close. So that's a big part of our marketing effort. But also part of our marketing programming is to help people understand why the natural world is important. And so we do a lot of social marketing. We encourage people to take part in our programming and our citizen science programs and to help deal with plastic pollution in our environment. So we do a lot of messaging through social media, through marketing means, to get people to understand what's happening and how they can be agents of change, and how they can help clean up the environment and document the kinds of plastic and the kinds of pollution that are out there, so that we can learn more, understand maybe where the points and sources of pollution are, and help mitigate those effects. And that's continued even throughout the pandemic as well.
Wow.
In fact, through our citizen science program last year, we realized more than 1 million pieces of plastic pollution collected and cleaned and documented through our citizen science.
Wow, amazing. And I know you talked a lot about donors throughout this particular interview, but how do you find investment and ongoing funding for mission-related activities such as research and conservation?
Well, so we would not exist without our donors, right? Our budget, which is typically about $12 million a year, roughly 80% of that comes through folks that come through the door But another 20% is from that generous outpouring of support of people that believe in our mission. And our mission is multifaceted. We're a community attraction that serves guests, but we're also a conservation and education organization. And so we have donors that respond uniquely to different aspects of that mission. There are donors that love sea turtles, that help even care for sea turtles along the beaches. So they naturally gravitate to supporting our Sea Turtle Care Center. There are donors that believe passionately in education, the power of education, and understand that we can provide a transformative spark to kids that need education beyond just the classroom. They need other resources to become interested in careers in STEM, for example. So we have a wonderful department of advancement officers that are able to reach out to our communities, develop relationships with folks that believe in what we believe in, and we're grateful for that support because it's enabled us to be the kind of organization we're meant to be.
And what other strong partnerships are you benefiting from right now?
We would not exist without our partnerships. So I mentioned the City of Charleston's right. One partner, DNR. We have a whole panoply of scientific partners. We do a lot of conservation field work all around the state with other conservation agencies. Our beach cleanups, our stream cleanups upstate, always draw in schools and corporate partners, different community groups. We're working right now with the State Floodwater Commission and Tom Mulligan, who's a member of our board of directors. And that has been a very fruitful partnership because we're introducing both organizations to each other's network of partners and just building a greater volume of concerned citizens that are able to help make us a cleaner state, a safer state, and a conservation responsible state.
And speaking of animals, Kevin, how does the aquarium support the health of aquatic animals in human care?
Well, one of the things that's interesting about aquariums like ours, because of our scientists and our animal care experts and our veterinary care staff, is that we're able to learn so much about the species that are in our care and that receive our care. Some of these animals, like sea turtles, you never see them, right? Except maybe mothers, adults that come to shore to lay their eggs on the beach. You never see the males. But since we actively care for rehabilitating sea turtles that are sick or injured, we're able to learn so much more about those species, what's required to keep their species around. They've been here for millions of years, and we don't want to lose them in the space of the next 100 years because of our own ignorance. So that's one of the benefits of an organization like an accredited aquarium, is our scientific expertise allows us to learn more about animals that desperately need our attention right now.
Let me ask you a silly question, but what particular animal describes you?
You know, people sometimes ask me what my favorite animal is, and I hate to answer that because I feel like I'm going to upset a member of our team because all people are special here, right? I love sea turtles, but for me personally, the most fascinating animal in our care is the octopus. And part of it is that they're so intelligent, they're so inquisitive, right. They have personalities that they display through their coloration, and yet they're so alien. They're so different from us physiologically. It's just remarkable that a species can have that capability and yet be so unhuman. And to me, they're a fascinating animal, and I just always love spending time with them here.
But that is amazing. Now, let me ask you this. How does the aquarium embrace local and global diversity?
It's a great question, Quintin. We, as part of our strategic plan, one of our principal planks is to focus on diversity and inclusion. And so we've long really reached out from an educational perspective to serve populations of children that perhaps don't have the greatest resources. In fact, the kids that come to our classrooms downstairs, there's such a demand for that experience that we conduct admissions on a lottery basis, and we intentionally weight the lottery toward Title I schools because we know that these kids may not have that experience otherwise. But we realized we needed to step up beyond that and open our doors more broadly to our visiting public. We needed to diversify our team even further, our board of directors, and we've made tremendous progress. That, as I look at our strategic plan, a lot of things had to be put on the shelf over the last year just because of the financial imperative. But that's not true of D&I. We really stepped forward. We've had some wonderful conversations. We've had a lot of activity. Our board has become more diversified. We've increased our engagement in various communities, the LGBTQ community. We celebrated Pride Week again this past year as we did the year prior. We've become a safe haven for LGBTQ members of our community who may feel threatened. Our doors are open to individuals, and we know how to respond to emergencies in that regard. We've increased our ability to serve students and learners of all abilities. We've become, through Culture City, an accrediting organization, a place where people with autism can learn effectively in an environment that's appropriate at different times of our day and with different means of learning and education. So when you ask that question, we've intentionally focused on the opportunities that are available through an organization like ours. We feel like we have an obligation and responsibility to lead. And we've made great ground. We have a long way to go, like every organization.
And I know obviously this aquarium opened in the summer of 2000 when I went there to volunteer for the opening of it. From 2000 to 2021, let me ask you this, Kevin, how much has the demographics in your market changed?
So the demographics in the marketplace? Yeah. So I've been here since 2005. I think one of the things that we've seen, obviously an influx of folks coming from other parts of the country, obviously an increase in the economic base, but coming with that has been an inflationary factor that makes it an even more expensive place to live. So whether it's our own team members or our public, so many folks are being pushed further away from the core. And here we are in downtown Peninsula Charleston. And it's more difficult for folks to get here. Some members of our community who may be looking for employment may find it more convenient and easier to work further out because they don't have to pay for parking here. So economically, it's been a lot more challenging, I think, than it was even when we opened our doors. And we have to be a part of the solution to that. We have to help the city come to terms with solutions to becoming more accessible for all segments of our population. And we have to make sure that we're paying fair wages and that we're in the position to help address that economic divide, not just from an educational perspective, but an economic one as well. And that's something we're greatly concerned about and concerned with, and can't profess to have all the solutions right now, but we're certainly signed up to help.
Kevin Mills, thank you so much for your time. And again, welcome to the award-winning Quintin's Close-Ups.
Quintin, it's so great to meet you, and congratulations on your award, by the way.
Thank you very much. I really do appreciate it.